So yesterday we discussed about the importance of cloud, what are the different features, most important features of cloud, what are the OSI model, and then we also took up the different services or the different jargons that are there based on the cloud services that are provided, right? What is IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, right? Now, today we will be discussing a bit more on one of the operating most uh, used operating system, I would say, that is Linux. Uh, are you, Joseph and Marvin, accustomed with Linux? Because I hear Joseph uses it. What about you, Marvin?
I think it's on mute.
Yes. You can also type one in the chat box if you know of Linux, or else uh, anything is fine for me. Cool, no issues. Let's go ahead. Okay, so basically we have in our Linux is basically an operating system, right? So just like Windows, Linux is one of the operating system that is mostly popular uh, in our industry, I would say, and most of our workloads do use Linux as an operating system. If you talk about Jenkins or GitHub worker nodes, they mostly use Linux OS, and also your Kubernetes workloads, those also run mostly on Linux. And again, I would say yes, most of the major use cases that are running on Linux. And another good example would be your Android. Your Android devices are powered by Linux operating system, right? So if you ask me a question, is Linux required for learning DevOps, and why not Windows? See, there is no hard answer to yes or no to it, but because of the usage of this operating system in our industry, because of it is used mostly 90% of people or industry favors Linux to run their workloads. So that is the reason I would say Linux is one of the OS that you need to at least have a grasp of. Not, I would say, as a DevOps, I won't say end to end. You have to be a security admin or a Linux pro in that. But yes, you were given an scenario or given an instance to you, you should be able to work along with it and also perform automation on it if required, right? So knowing that system is important for all our DevOps engineers, right? Okay. Now Linux has the Linux operating system has different pieces, I would say, or different components. Let's take up quickly one component at a time. Let me not focus much on drawing diagrams. Let's focus on explaining. The first would be the bootloader. Second would be kernel, the init system, daemons, graphical server, and the last would be the environment. Okay, so Linux is mostly has these components. So we as human being has we have different organs that make our entire body. So likewise, Linux also Linux operating system has different pieces that's clubbed together to form that operating system, right? So the first one is bootloader with this this is the first piece, and with the naming convention, I think it helps you to understand what it does. So we had heard of boot or booting a device, or uh, this term may be familiar to you, and loader. So if you divide, so it is basically a software that manages the boot processes of your computers, right? Or simply when you're starting your machine, all your all your services, or all your internal softwares that support that need to support that operating system needs to get warmed up or loaded, right? So bootloader helps in that uh, uh, work. Okay. The next is the kernel. So the kernel is I would say, the core of your system, which and manages your CPU, memory, and the peripheral devices that you attach to your OS. So kernel is the master or the brain of this Linux OS. Then is the init system. The init system is basically it is a subsystem, I would say, that uses that helps to link you between your application layer as well as your bootstrap layer. Or if I tell you on a very simple terms, it helps you to bootstrap your user layers, right? Or user space. So boot layer is the first layer that is helping you to charge up your internal services for your OS. But once you have logged in, let's say if I give you an analogy for Windows, if you had seen Windows, first is the boot layer that you see the black screen coming up for a few seconds, and then you go to your Windows starts to load. That's the kernel layer, and then in turn it's the init system that runs. What is the init system? Init system is nothing that when you log in the first time, you create your own user, right? So your user namespace gets loaded, right? So likewise in Linux also, your users namespaces need to get loaded, right? So that is basically done by your init systems. The next would be the daemons. What are daemons? Daemons are basically the background services that running, maybe your sound, your printing, your scheduling. Those are your background services. Maybe the other services you might have installed, Terraform, you might have installed nginx, you must have if you have installed um, other packages, right? Those are I would say, the background services that needs to run. So daemons are those background services. Next is the graphical server. Graphical server is the, I would say, the displays that plays the part of your monitor, right? It gives you a visual experience. So that is mainly served by your graphical server. And next is the environment, right? The environment would be a component that will help us, the users, to interact with the Linux OS, right? So this is the pretty much the high level pieces of a Linux OS, right? And another thing that we need to look on is the shell, or let me take up another diagram. The another piece that is there in that Linux architecture is also shell. Now, if we club this together, it makes up my Linux operating system, right? And to interact with my Linux operating system for the graphical side, this is being held by this graphical server and environment, and also using our shell. We have different kinds of shells. We can go into that, but using shell, it is that interface that will help us to communicate uh, with our uh, Linux kernel and us as users, right? So if you had if you had been using Linux, then you can visualize this thing. But if you are using it first time, then few generic situations you might not have a graphical interface for your Linux boxes, right? So in that scenario, shell is your go-to way to interact with your Linux operating system. Okay, so there are mainly 3 to 4 kinds of shells that are generally present. So one would be corn shell, the second would be C shell, the POSIX shell, the Bourne shell. These shells are utilized, or I would say this is an interface which takes input from us and it sends the instructions to the Linux kernel. And likewise, the results are again given back by the kernel and it is put forward by the shell to us, right? So this is the typical pieces that makes up our Linux box. Any doubts up till now? Cool. If you do not have, uh, just to let you know more onto Linux a bit, is you might have now have a thought right in your mind, then what is Debian, then what is CentOS, or what is Ubuntu, or what is Red Hat that we see. We know Linux, but generally people talk about CentOS, Ubuntu, Red Hat uh, on these terms, right? Then what are these? Are they Linux, or are they different separate components again, right? So we are here of CentOS, Ubuntu, RHEL, Fedora, and maybe now the more powerful ones, maybe the Amazon Linux or these. Then what are these? Are they not Linux? To answer your question, yes, these are also Linux. But again, this uses Linux operating system, but these are on generic known as Linux distributions or different flavors of our Linux operating system. Okay. I hope it is clear. So what it, if I tell you on a definition way, so it is an operating, this Linux distributions or this Linux flavors is an operating system that is made from a collection of software that includes the Linux kernel, because Linux kernel is your brain, and a package management system. What do I mean by package management system? Maybe Yum, or maybe pip, on these sorts, right? What does this package management system do? It helps you to install different services inside your Linux operating system. So basically, it is a box which has the Linux operating system, and on top of it, they attach a package management system for our users to use that Linux box according to our use case, right? And maybe each team is maintaining these boxes, right? What, what when do I mean by boxes? Is mean this Linux distros, right? So with the RHEL, you can it stands for Red Hat Linux, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So these are maintained by Red Hat team. Again, CentOS is based on RHEL, but it is not uh, mostly maintained by Linux. So I would say not maintained by RHEL community. Then we have Fedora. Uh, then we have Ubuntu or Debian. So these are different flavors. So the main component that differentiates these flavors of Linux is the package management system. But at the end of the day, the Linux kernel remains the same for all of these flavors. Okay. You don't have to know means much deep into it, but at least the naming conventions and which package management they utilizes. At least that is sufficient for you to understand. Okay, now let's at least now you have an understanding of what is a Linux box and what are the different pieces that make up a Linux box. What is its at least high level usage of those, and what are the different flavors of Linux distros or Linux boxes that we get now in the market, right? Now let's look into a bit of uh, the commands and the file systems and understand Linux a bit, right? Let me go to my Linux box.
Guys, please, when will we start having materials to study? On our spare time?
Sorry.
I'm asking about material, study material.
Materials, yes, you might be getting that in a couple of days maybe for a
Okay,
few the
okay.
I think it would be mostly the topics we had covered and then we share the materials. I think it
E-
goes
e-
in that way.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking
Yes, yes, yes.
about. Right. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a typical Linux uh, box that it looks. It's not very charming, I would say. These are mostly black boxes that you get. Now let's understand a few uh, things, right? This only will make it more clear to people who are new to Linux and how to identify. So once you have logged in and you have created your user, so it's how do you differentiate on which user you are running? So this is my user that that is presently any commands that is being run with this user, right? This is my server name @Akash. For now is the server name. You can have your IPs if you have. That is how you can differentiate between the boxes. The next comes your this big naming thing that you see is basically the current directory where you are where your I would say cursor is and where you will be doing your work. Let's so that is how you differentiate or you know how this looks like. Let's see. So now you see the user has just now changed. What is sudo and what is all? Let's not look into this as of now because I not help you understand. But to understand which user will now run the commands, it will be now see root. The server remains the same, and we are now into a different path, right? So this is my home path or my root path, I would say. So what is PWD? PWD gives you the present uh, folder structure where you are presently sitting, right? To know that structure, if you are confused, where is your cursor? Because in Windows you have those graphical interfaces to look at, right? But in Linux, it's not so simpler if you are not having that graphical interface. It's only the shell that you get. So you have running PWD will give you the present folder path, right? Now, let me create quickly. Uh, okay, so what is mkdir? Mkdir stands for make directory. So if you have a, uh, I would say, if you have a requirement to create a directory or a folder, I would say, then this is your go-to command, mkdir, and then you put your name of the directory. Now, how do you see whether it got created? How do you list those? You can run ls. Ls will give you horizontal but if you run ls hyphen ltr, it will give you a vertical along with the definition of your file systems. This is what we are most interested in on our initial rounds. So yeah, so if you now see how to list and get all the details, it can be ls ltr, and these arguments can change. Okay, it you can means refine it more based on your requirement. That's up to you, but at least the fundamental you should understand is ls is listing of the directory. Now if you see this, right, I have my test directory, and along with it there are so many things that sits in front of it, right? So if I talk about these, what are these? So this is the permission level that is there for this directory, right? I'll come to individual, but next, if you see, this is the there are two names, Akash and Akash, right? So this is the ownership of this directory, to which who is the owner of this directory at an individual level and at a group level, right? Next, this is the ID, it's not key, and then this is the time, that on when it was created, right? So in Linux, we have, now you might ask me what sort of file systems that we have in Linux. So it is mostly folders or directories. It can be normal special files, can be .sh or .yaml, any sort of files, or there can be links, right? What are links? On a high level, if you try to understand, let's say I have two folders, test and test one. So if these two, we can link these two together. There is a mechanism known as soft link or hard link. We'll see to that. But if you are linking these two, then they, any changes that you make on test will get automatically reflected to test one, right? So it's just a I would say one sort of replication. So this is also one part of file system that do have in Linux. And there are also domains or sockets file systems. It's I would say a special type of file type, which is similar to your TCP or IP sockets that you have. So these are networking file systems. These are special networking file systems. So broader category, if I say directories, then your files with .sh or .ml or those extension files. Then you will have your links, and the end would be your special networking socket files, right? Now let's go ahead a bit. Now let's say I have a requirement of creating a new user for my Linux box, right? Let's say I got a new requirement to create a new user account for a user who has joined my team to work in my team, right? So how can we do that? We can use user app. This is the command that we will be using, right? I like to go a bit fast on these things because these are mostly self-explanatory things. But so I like to go a bit faster on this, right? Because we have many more important topics that I think we should spend more time, and this would be very much simpler and self-explanatory, right? And which I would like to go through. I can give you demos on all, but that will not help us much, right? If I do you, so I'll help you to understand the commands, what they're used for, and then we quickly go ahead with this Linux things. Okay, so let's say I have a new user to create. It would be sudo user add, say Marvin test. Just taking up a quick name. So now I do have a user with the name of Marvin Test, right? That's all how you what you need to create a new user accounts, right? Now there are multiple ways that I can uh, help this user to fix its different associated options. I would say I can help him to set up his own shell when he logs in, or set up his working directory once he logs in, or what would be the particular UID. UID is I would say an identifier of this person. How do we do that? And these all, right? We can define it. Let's say if I want to do that, so that can be again done in two ways. If first would is if the user is, you can do it at the time of creating the user. Let's say I create home, and then I specify the home path for him, right? Let's say slash home slash test. So whenever this user logs in, he would be directly logging into this path, instead of when I log in, I being a root admin, I log into the root space as I showed you, right? Instead of that, this user will directly log into this path, right? Now you might have heard me talking a term of now admin and users. It's very simpler. Admin, you can understand with the name, is a person who has the entire privilege to run any commands or do any task on your system. And likewise, if you are a normal user, then your privileges are restricted, and that is how what's the difference between a normal user and a admin user, right? This is one way of you creating it. But the other way around is, if you have already have your users existing on your system, then you can use instead of user add, it will be user mod, means user modify, right? So using this command line, you can again already using this command line, you can again play with your users all different sort of accesses, or all different sort of privileges that you want to restrict him to, that also you can play with, right? So I have few tasks for you. I'm putting those tasks in chat. You can practice. If you face any challenge, we can discuss this chat option. Now let's go ahead a bit. Now, same likewise, if you have user to delete, again, you can use user del. This is very self-explanatory. Okay, another part. Secondly, let's go ahead and how do you log into your remote server? Again, one of the thing that is mostly utilized when we work with our cloud environments, or when we work with our from one server to another. Let me go to my PowerPoint or my draw.io, that will help you to quickly take this up. It's a very self-explanatory things. When I work on shell script, I'll come back. Work on it. So yes, let's work over here a bit. So first we learn how to user add or user modify, right? So user add is user add, user modify is user mod. That is the command base to use. Then user delete would be user del, and then you pass on your commands. Next, if I tell you how do you do remote login, right? This is again one of the most used use case or most used commands, I would say, that you need to uh, or daily use. So let's discuss that a bit too, right? So in simple terms, how do you SSH to an instance? But so if it is SSH root at the rate server IP. Okay. So what with using this command you can do that, but you might have doubts on this. So what is SSH? SSH is nothing. It is just a client, or it is a program that will help you in your remote machine logging and then executing commands on that machine from your base server. So let's say you have a GCP VM private IP VM already created, and now you want to connect to that VM from your Windows or from your Windows Linux machine. You want to directly connect to that GCP VM, right? How can you do that? That process is basically one way is you go to that cloud console of GCP and then you directly connect to that box, right? That's one way. The other way around is you cannot every time leave your go and log in and do all those things uh, individually, right? So the other way around of doing that is known as remote login. So the SSH will help you to have that facilitation of remote login, right? So SSH is the client, root is the username that I have just defined, at the rate, then you put your IP. It can be a public IP, it can be a private IP. Based on your use case, you can log in, right? And if you have a password, then you also need to pass your password or your private key, right? Those also you can pass SSH hyphen private key. So I did not take a private key as of now, but what is private key and public key? So these are basically used for encryptions. If you have worked in it, worked with these things, you must have your thoughts clear. But these are basically done to encrypt. These components are basically used to encrypt your data when you're trying to make a communication, right? So private key is a very secured one. So let's say we are trying to encrypt our data, right, and trying to do an S. Okay, if I go into that, I had specific sessions on that, but yeah. So what is private key and what is public key? Just understand these are keys that is uh, that is being used to encrypt our data or lock our data when the data is traveling from one place to another, right? So just visualize in that way that when you also travel from one baggage, right, you tend to lock it, right, so that no one can use. You go and open it with your own keys, right? So likewise, the same concept is over here. So you do not want your data to be read when it is going from one place to another by some other third party people, right? You want to have your data more secured. So for these things, you take generally take help of these private and public keys, right? Cool. So we understood what is SSH. Now let's go a bit more ahead and start learning a there are other few commands that are there, generic commands. Let's now look into those. Okay, so now if you say if someone says to you, what is the present uh, path where you are working? So it was very simpler. I had already show you. It is PWD. It will give you the present path of where you are sitting and where you are working or where you are trying to utilize your file system. The other thing is, if you are trying to move from one path to another, let's say I am in test and I want to go. It's better that I show you over on the practicals. Only one liners would be easier instead of writing and wasting time. Guys, one more thing. If you know these things, you can stop me over there and we can go ahead. I'm just in an impression that it's the first time we are hitting Linux. So I'm going into these basic details. If you are familiar with these things, then we can definitely move ahead with some complex things, right? So please do stop me if you know all these things, right? So let's see. Let's say I am in my present directory is home, Akash, study GCP DevOps, and I want to go back one step back to my one step back in my directory, right? Or my present path. How do I do that? Using cd dot dot. It's the change directory. Cd stands for change directory, and dot dot states one step back, right? Now if I put dot dot slash dot dot means go two step back, because I do not have any folder backwards, so it is restricting me, but it is how that signifies. Cd hyphen will take you back to the your original present directory from where you had come. It's a one stop shortcut to take you back. Fine. Cool. Let's go ahead. We had already run mkdir. Mkdir is making your directory. Likewise, if I use instead of mk how to remove my directory, you can either use rm. We have two folders. Let's remove one. Rmdir test one. So you see my folder, entire folder got deleted, right? So if you want to delete your entire folder structure, you can use either rmdir or rm, right? Rm will also work in the same way, right? Okay. Next is touch. If you want to, if your requirement is now to create a blank file on your Linux boxes in Windows, those are very easier because you get graphical things. But here in Shell, if you want to create a new file system, there are multiple ways that you can do that. One would be, the basic would be touch. Let's say abc.exe. So what it did create a blank file for me, right? So with touch command, you can create these blank files. Now, how do you see what is inside that file? You need to do a cat abc, putting your file name, hit enter, and uh, you get the details. Because I do not have any details, it did not give. Let me put some details. So how do you edit those details in your file? There are multiple ways, okay, how we can edit and how we can create this. Just I'm giving the basic things. At least you have that understanding of how to do these things. Okay, so how do we edit? So it is very easier. Vi is an editor, or nano is an editor. On these you can use to edit the contents of your file system, right? So let me put. So again, when you use these file systems, you see if I type anything, initially it does not go in, right? So always go into an insert mode before you start making typing your changes. Otherwise, what happens is, if you do not keep go into insert mode by pressing your I button, what it does is it tries, when you start typing, it tries to find a character that matches, and then it will pick up writing to it. So it's better we always go to insert mode and do our changes. So let's do a thing. This is my test file. Now how to save? Escape, go out of your insert mode. There are two ways to do that. Either do WQ exclamation, that also saves, or the simpler way of doing would be caps lock on double Z. If you press, it does save that file for you, right? And now if I check the contents of the file, you see it gives me the contents of the file. This is my test file, right? So now let's look into some other examples. So if you want to find a particular file on your system and you are not sure where does it sit, right? So let me go one step back, and we do not know where does it sit. We can also run a find command, and we can take help of this find command to find our files and directories. Okay, or it is basically locating your whatever search file searches you want to do, that can be done with the file command, right? If I just give you one example, find hyphen n name abc.txt. So because it is there in my present directory, it had directly given me the file back, right? It is here. So dot slash means the present directory, right? Next, let's use a bit more powerful things. Let me three. Now, let's say I want to find a particular file in my search, right? And I want to also pass particular filters, right? How do I do that? We can do those using grep. So if I do ls hyphen ltr, then if I want to only search, let's say for test3, I'm just giving you examples. So we can use this powerful tool of grep. So just don't keep your thoughts restricted of grep can only be done on the simpler things. No, grep can, these powerful tools can be used with multiple filters that we can pass out. The major thing what I wanted to instill in your minds is to initiate this process, you have to, this is a syntax that you need to follow. Rest is upon you. How do you want to filter it out? How you want to put your conditions? That's up to you. But the convention of your syntax is whatever commands you pass from Linux, then this is known as a pipe. You put a space pipe and then you write your filter, right? That is filter command, that is grep, and then whatever conditions you pass beyond that, that will give you the result. So what I had done is list out all the functions, all my list out all my files and folders in this path, but I am putting an extra filter to it, only give me the results of test3. I want to only have the results where my test3 file or folder is, right? So what it did was internally it took the output of the first command, did a conditional filter based on the I would say did a filter on the condition that I had passed, and then it gave me back the output, right? I hope this logic is clear. Next, what is sudo? You had seen me using sudo to just change one of the user. Its sudo is nothing but it is a super user. So let's say I as an user, Akash as an user, how do you know what is the present user? This is my user. So I am trying to run a command, but I might not have the privilege to run that command, right? So what in that scenarios we can use sudo or super user do. So what we are telling, hey, give me an high level privilege, right? to perform this task. Okay, so in that scenarios we use basically sudos. Okay, then we have few basic more things. So let's say, what is the system disk information? If you want to get that, you can have with df, right? Df will give you the entire system file systems information. So what are the file systems, what are the mount points, every details are given to you with a df, right? Now if you want to check for a particular directories disk usage, is du. So it df and du, these are simpler questions. You will also get in your interviews if you are starting afresh. So this can be asked because when you use df and du. So just to test your Linux knowledges, people do ask if you're so. So df and du, df is the entire disk and du is only at the directory level, right? Okay. The next one I want to tell you, because we are not covering all the Linux commands because there are more than I would say thousands, but at least the most important ones that you will be using on your day-to-day life. I am mostly speaking on that, right? Okay. The next would be uh, x2 and ls-ltr. So when I had shown you this listing, I this is the first part where I left you with the privileges, right? So this is the privileges that are given to these files or this directory. So you can just see the differences that are already getting shown on my screen, right? So there is read, this is read write, this is read write execute. So R is read, W is write, and X is execute, right? So you can see these permissions, right? So these permissions can be changed by a, fundamental known as a function or a command known as chmod. And again, you can see this Akash and Akash, right? This individual and group access. Again, the ownership of the files, who owns this file, can also be changed, right? This can be changed with ch own, right? So so if I do a chmod 777 on, let's say, abc.txt. So what I am just trying to do, I am elevating the permissions of this abc.txt to the highest permissions that is that Linux box provides. So 7 means read, write, execute. Now you might think why I am passing 3 sevens. So you can see it is one level, second level, third level, right? So user, groups, and all. So everyone who wants to use this file can have all the privileges to do any functions that they want, either write, either execute, or either read. So now if I do an lsltr, so you see read, write, execute, read, write, execute, and read, write, execute. So anyone who is trying to use this file can have the highest privilege. They won't have any restrictions, right? If I only put it to read access, so no one can edit those files, right? On that scenario, just think it in that. Okay, and few other things, very similar things. Just want to tell you. So let's say you are not sure, you are not sure of what are the commands you ran for now, and you want to go back to your commands. So these are the hacks, I would say. Just run history, will show you the entire list of commands you ran. Or another shortest way of doing this is, let's say you have used a command yesterday and now again you want to run. Instead of pressing up arrow, with up arrow of your screen, you can go back to your commands. But this is a very tedious process. But let's say I want to go fast and filter. So do a press control R together. It's basically reverse search, and type the with any filter that you want to, that you think that you have used. So let's say I was just trying to check the user mod, so it directly took me to that command that I run, and then you can just directly run that command. These are few hacks, I would say. Then there is, let's say I want to check the connectivity from my box to, let's say, www.google.com. So how do I get to do that? We can have ping to do that. Ping is nothing, but it is basically checks your connectivity status to a particular server, right? So these are the basic commands that we generally tend to use. So you can also check it from your side, the command lines. If you have any doubts on any commands, we can definitely take up and discuss in the next class, right? Yeah, that is what I have. If you have any doubts, you can let me know. Okay, one last command that's just coming to my mind. Echo. What is echo? This is also you will use mostly. So so what I just did is, if I only run for echo. So echo is just doing a print of whatever you are. If you want to print any lines, so the go-to command for you is echo, right? And the other command which I ran is, it's again echo my name, but take this output, instead of showing me this output on my desktop, take it to this file. So now if I get this file out, you see my it is showing my name inside this file. The contents what I had passed in echo is has gone into my file, right? Okay, so this is what I had for today. Maybe we'll take up few interesting shell scripting or some interesting command lines in the follow up. And if you have any doubts on any commands, or if you're not able to understand, you are using regularly, you can let me know. We can discuss on that too. Yeah, any questions or doubts? And yeah, I had given you a small task in the chat. Try to utilize this. You are able to perform this. Any doubts, guys?
I don't have that, but I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. I remember we discussed about running a CI/CD pipeline, like using a GitLab. Did you talk to the Visualpath admin to revise the syllabus?
Yes, yes. So we will be going ahead with GitLab CI only. We are not
Okay,
taking up Jenkins. So yeah.
okay then.
Okay. So if you do not have any other questions, let's park the session for now. Have a great day or good night to everyone. Then we connect back maybe tomorrow or Monday,
Thank you.
right? Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.